Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chapter 1. Observing the armies on the battlefield of Kuruksettra. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kuruksetre Samaveta Jyutsabaha Mamaka Pandavas Chaiva Kimo Kurvata Sanjaya. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjay, after assembling in the place of pilgrimage at Kuruksetra, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do, being desirous to fight? Bhagavad-gita is the widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad-gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad-gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand Bhagavad-gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad-gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is the perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kuruksetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was personally present on the planet for the guidance of mankind. The Dharmakshetra, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kuruksetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did my sons and the sons of Pandu do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kuruksetra for a determined engagement of war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kuruksetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably, because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyas, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyas, Sanjaya is able to envision the battle of Kuruksetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with his nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kuruksetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra's son, Duryodhana, and others will be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons, headed by Yudhisthira, would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmakshatra and Kuruksettra, apart from the historical and Vedic importance. Text 2. Sanjaya uvacha Drishva tu pandavanikam Vyudham Duryodhanastata Achayam upasangamya Rajavachanam abhavit. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army gathered by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and began to speak the following words. Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well that his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion, and he was sure that they could never reach an understanding with the Pandavas, who were all pious since birth. Still, he was doubtful about the influence of the place of pilgrimage, and Sanjaya could understand his motive in asking about the situation on the battlefield. He wanted, therefore, to encourage the despondent king, and thus he warned him that his sons were not going to make any sort of compromise under the influence of the holy place. Sanjaya therefore informed the king that his son Duryodhana, after seeing the military force of the Pandavas, at once went to the commander-in-chief, Dronacharya, to inform him of the real position. Although Duryodhana is mentioned as the king, he still had to go to the commander on account of the seriousness of the situation. He was therefore quite fit to be a politician, but Duryodhana's diplomatic veneer could not disguise the fear he felt when he saw the military arrangement of the Pandavas. Text 3. Pashyaitam Panduputranam Achaya Mahatim Chamum Vyudham Drupada Putrena Tavashishya Dimata. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Duryodhana, a great diplomat, wanted to point out the defects of Dronacharya, the great Brahmana commander-in-chief. Dronacharya had some political quarrel with King Drupada, the father of Draupadi, who was Arjuna's wife. As a result of this quarrel, Drupada performed a great sacrifice, which he received the benediction of having a son who would be able to kill Dronacharya. Dronacharya knew this perfectly well, and yet, as a liberal Brahmana, he did not hesitate to impart all his military secrets when the son of Drupada, Dhristadyumna, was entrusted to him for military education. Now, on the battlefield of Kuruksettra, Dhristadyumna took the side of the Pandavas, and it was he who arranged for their military phalanx after having learned the art from Dronacharya. Duryodhana pointed out this mistake of Dronacharya's so that he might be alert and uncompromising in the fighting. By this he wanted to point out also that he should not be similarly lenient in battle against the Pandavas, who are also Dronacharya's affectionate students. Arjuna especially was his most affectionate and brilliant student. Duryodhana also warned that such a leniency in the fight would lead to defeat. Text 4. Atra suram heshvasa vimajana samajudhi yudhano viratascha dropadascha maharataha. Here in this army, there are many heroic bowmen equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna. There are also great fighters like Yudhana, Virata, and Drupada. Even though Dhristadyumna was not a very important obstacle in the face of Dronacharya's very great power in the military art, there are many others who are the cause of fear. They are mentioned by Duryodhana as great stumbling blocks on the path of victory, because each and every one of them was as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. He knew the strength of Bhima and Arjuna, and thus he compared the others with them. Text 5. Jista Ketushiketana Kashirajas Viryavan Purjit Kunti Bhojascha Saibyaschana Pungavaha. There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Jista Ketushiketana Kashiraj Purjit Kunti Bhojan Saibya. Yudhamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Viryavan Subhadra Dropadeyascha Sabaiva Maharataha. They are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamaja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. Text 7. Ashmakam tu Vishista Jeg Tanibodha Dvijotama Nayakama Masanyasya Samgyatam Tan Bravimite. O best of the Brahmins, for your information, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Text 8. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samitinjaya Ashvatama Vikarnascha Sumadatis Tathaibacha. There are personalities like yourself, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvatama, Vikarna, and the son of Samadatta, Kubarishrabha, who are always victorious in battle. Duryodhana mentioned the exceptional heroes in the battle, all of whom are ever victorious. Vikarna is the brother of Duryodhana. Ashvatama is the son of Dronacharya. And Somadati, or Burishrabha, is the son of the king of the Bahalikas. Karna is the half-brother of Arjuna, as is born of a Kunti before her marriage with King Pandu. Kripacharya married the twin sister of Dronacharya. Anye cha bahuvaha sura marate tvakta jibitaha nana shastra praharana sabejudha visaradaha. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons, and all of them are experienced in military science. As far as the others are concerned, like Jayadratha, Krita, Bhama, Shalya, etc., all are determined to lay down their lives for Duryodhana's sake. In other words, it is already concluded that all of them would die in the battle of Kuruksettra for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. Duryodhana was, of course, confident of his victory on account of the above-mentioned combined strength of his friends. Aprayaptam tadashmakam balam bhishma virakshitam prayaptam tuidamitashyam balam bhima virakshitam. Our strength is immeasurable, and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Herein, an estimation of the comparative strength is made by Duryodhana. He thinks that the strength of his armed forces is immeasurable, being specifically protected by the most experienced general, grandfather Bhishma. On the other hand, the forces of the Pandavas are limited, being protected by a less experienced general, Bhima. It's like a fig in the presence of Bhishma. Duryodhana was always envious of Bhima because he knew perfectly well that if he should die at all, he would only be killed by Bhima. But at the same time, he was confident of his victory on account of the presence of Bhishma, who was a far superior general. His conclusion that he would come out of the battle victorious was well ascertained. Text 11. Anyeshu cha saveshu yatha bhagama vastitaha bhishmami bhamirhakshanto bhavantaha savaibahi. Now, all of you must give full support to grandfather Bhishma standing at your respective strategic points in the flanks of the army. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man. So everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in a fight, and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes would not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the flanks. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Dev. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya in the battle, because he well knew that they did not even speak a word. When Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to strip naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that all such affection would now be completely given up by them, as was customary during the gambling performances. Text 12. Tasya sanjanayam hasham kurvridha pitamaha simhanharam vinajyotsai shankam dadmo pratapavan. Then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, like the sound of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. The grandsire of the Kuru dynasty could understand the inner meaning of the heart of his grandson, Duryodhana, and out of his natural compassion for him, he tried to cheer him by blowing his conch shell very loudly, befitting his position as a lion. Indirectly, by the symbolism of the conch shell, he informed his depressed grandson, Duryodhana, that he had no chance of victory in the battle because the Supreme Lord Krishna was on the other side. But still, it was his duty to conduct the fight, and no pains will be spared in that connection. Text 13. Tataha shankascha beryascha panavana kagomukaha sahasaibhavya anyanta sashabdas tumalobhavat. After that, the conch shells, bugles, trumpets, drums, and horns were all suddenly sounded, and the combined sound was tumultuous. Text 14. Tataha sweta hayajukte mahatis yadane stito madhava pandavas chaiba divyo shanko pradhadmato. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as transcendental. The sounding of the transcendental conch shells indicated that there was no hope of victory for the other side, because Krishna was on the side of the Pandavas. Jayas tu Panduputranam yesham hakshe janardanaha. Victory is always with persons like the sons of Pandu, because Lord Krishna is associated with them. And whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there, because the goddess of fortune never lives alone without her husband. Therefore, victory and fortune were awaiting Arjuna, as indicated by the transcendental sound produced by the conch shell of Vishnu or Lord Krishna. Besides that, the chariot on which both the friends were seated was donated by Agni, the fire god, to Arjuna, and this indicated that this chariot was capable of conquering all sides wherever it was drawn over the three worlds. Text 15. Panshan Janyam Rishikesho Devadatam Dhananjaya Pundaram Dadmo Mahashankam Bhima Kama Vikodaraha. Then Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchanjanya. Arjuna blew his, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean tasks, blew his terrific conch shell called Pundaram. Lord Krishna is referred to as Rishikesh in this verse because he is the owner of all senses. Living entities are part and parcel of him, and therefore the senses of the living entities are also part and parcel of his senses. The impersonalists cannot account for the senses of the living entities, and therefore they are always anxious to describe all living entities as senseless or impersonal. The Lord, situated in the hearts of all living entities, directs their senses, but he directs in terms of the surrender of the living entity. And in the case of a pure devotee, he directly controls the senses. Here, on the battlefield of Kuruksettra, the Lord directly controls the transcendental senses of Arjuna, and thus his particular name of Rishikesh. The Lord has different names according to his different activities. For example, his name is Madhusudan because he killed the demon of the name Madhu. His name is Govinda because he gives pleasure to the cows and to the senses. His name is Vasudev because he appeared as the son of Vasudev. His name is Devaki Nandana because he accepted Devaki as his mother. His name is Yashoda Nandan because he awarded his childhood pastimes to Yashoda at Vrindavan. His name is Parthasarathi because he worked as charioteer of his friend Arjun. Similarly, his name is Rishikesh because he gave direction to Arjun on the battlefield of Kuruksetra. Arjuna is referred to as Dhananjaya in this verse because he helped his elder brother in fetching wealth when it was required by the king to make expenditures for different sacrifices. Similarly, Bhima is known as Rikodara because he could eat as voraciously as he could perform Herculean tasks, such as killing the demon Hidimba. So the particular types of conch shell blown by the different personalities on the side of the Pandavas, beginning with the lords, were all very encouraging to the fighting soldiers. On the other side, there were no such credits, nor the presence of Lord Krishna, the Supreme Director, nor that of the Goddess of Fortune. So they were predestined to lose the battle, and that was the message announced by the sounds of the conch shells. Text 16 to 18. Ananta Vijayam Raja Kunti Putra Yudhishthira Nakulaha Sahadevascha Sugashamani Pushpakal Kashyascha Parameshvascha Shikandi Cha Maharataha Dustadjumya Viratascha Sachakischa Parajitaha Draupadeyascha Savashaha Pritivipate Subhadrascha Mahabaho Sankam Dhadmo Pritak. King Yudhisthira, the son of Kunti, blew his conch shell, the Ananta Vijay, and Nakul and Sahadev blew the Sugashamani Pushpaka. That great archer, the king of Kashi, the great fighter Shikandi, Drishtajumya, Virata, and the unconquerable Satyaki, Drupad, the sons of Draupadi, and the others, O king, such as the son of Subhadra, greatly armed, all blew their respective conch shells. Sanjaya informed King Dhritarashtra very tactfully that his unwise policy of deceiving the sons of Pandu and endeavoring to enthrone his own sons on the seat of the kingdom was not very laudable. The signs already clearly indicated that the whole Kuru dynasty would be killed in that great battle, beginning with the grandsire Bhishma, down to the grandsons like Abhimanyu and others, including the kings from many states of the world. All were present there and all were doomed. The whole catastrophe was due to King Dhritarashtra because he encouraged the policy followed by his sons. Text 19. Sagosha Dhatarashranam Hidayani Vradharya Nabhashta Prithivim Chaiba Tumalabhyanunandayam. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. Purport. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there is no heart breaking on the part of the Pandavas. Such occurrences are not mentioned. But in this particular verse, it is mentioned that the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra were shattered by the sounds vibrated by the Pandavas' party. This is due to the Pandavas and their confidence in Lord Krishna. One who takes shelter of the Supreme Lord has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. Text 20. Atavaibhastitam duristva datarastram kapidwaja pravrite shastra sampate danujhamya pandabaha rishikesham tadabhakyam idam ahamahipate. O king, at that time Arjuna, the son of Pandu, who was seated in his chariot, his flag marked with Hanuman, took up his bow and prepared to shoot his arrows, looking at the sons of Dhritarashtra. O king, Arjuna then spoke to Rishikesh, Krishna, these words. The battle was just about to begin. It is understood from the above statement that the sons of Dhritarashtra were more or less disheartened by the unexpected arrangement of military force by the Pandavas, who were guided by the direct instructions of Lord Krishna on the battlefield. The emblem of Hanuman on the flag of Arjuna is another sign of victory, because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Rama in the battle between Rama and Ravana, and Lord Rama emerged victorious. Now both Rama and Hanuman were present on the chariot of Arjuna to help him. Lord Krishna is Rama himself, and wherever Lord Rama is, his eternal servitor Hanuman and his eternal consort Sita, the goddess of fortune, are present. Therefore, Arjuna had no cause to fear any enemies whatsoever. And above all, the Lord of the senses, Lord Krishna, was personally present to give him direction. Thus, all good counsel was available to Arjuna in the matter of executing the battle. In such auspicious conditions, arranged by the Lord for his eternal devotee, lay the signs of assured victory. Text 21 and 22. Arjuna uvacha seneo bhayamadye ratam stapaya meyachuta yavanitan rikshayaham yodho kamam avastitam kai maya sahajodhavyam asmin rana samujame. Arjuna said, O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so I may see who is present here, who is desirous of fighting, and with whom I must contend in this great battle attempt. Although Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, out of his causeless mercy, he was engaged in the service of his friend. He never fails in his affection for his devotees, and thus he is addressed herein as infallible. As charioteer, he had to carry out the orders of Arjuna, and since he did not hesitate to do so, he is addressed as infallible. Although he had accepted the position of a charioteer for his devotee, his supreme position was not challenged. In all circumstances, he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Rishikesh, the Lord of the total senses. The relationship between the Lord and his servitor is very sweet and transcendental. The servitor is always ready to render a service to the Lord. And similarly, the Lord is always seeking an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He takes greater pleasure in his pure devotees assuming the advantageous position of ordering him than he does in being the giver of orders. As master, everyone is under his orders and no one is above him or to order him. But when he finds that a pure devotee is ordering him, he obtains transcendental pleasure, although he is the infallible master of all circumstances. As a pure devotee of the Lord, Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers, but he was forced to come onto the battlefield by the obstinacy of Duryodhana, who was never agreeable to any peaceful negotiation. Therefore, he was very anxious to see who the leading persons present on the battlefield were. Although there was no question of a peacemaking endeavor on the battlefield, he wanted to see them again and to see how much they were bent upon demanding an unwanted war. Text 23. Yochamanan avekshaham ya iteatra samagataha datarastrasya dubodhe yudhepriya chikeshava. Let me see those who have come here to fight, wishing to please the evil-minded son of Dhritarashtra. It was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to usurp the kingdom of the Pandavas by evil plans in collaboration with his father Dhritarashtra. Therefore, all persons who had joined the side of Duryodhana must have been birds of the same feather. Arjuna wanted to see them in the battlefield before the fight was begun, just to learn who they were, but he had no intention of proposing peace negotiations with them. It was also a fact that he wanted to see them to make an estimate of the strength which he had to face, although he was quite confident of victory because Krishna was sitting by his side. Text 24. Sanjaya uvacha ibamukta rishikesho gurukeshana bharata senyo bhayamadye stapayit bharathotamam. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharat, being thus addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. In this verse, Arjuna is referred to as Gurakesh. Guraka means sleep, and one who conquers sleep is called Gurakesh. Sleep also means ignorance. So Arjuna conquered both sleep and ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. As a great devotee of Krishna, he could not forget Krishna even for a moment, because that is the nature of a devotee. Either in waking or in sleep, a devotee of the Lord can never be free from thinking of Krishna's name, form, quality, and pastimes. Thus, the devotee of Krishna can conquer both sleep and ignorance simply by thinking of Krishna constantly. This is called Krishna consciousness or samadhi. As Rishikesh, or the director of the senses and mind of every living entity, Krishna could understand Arjuna's purpose in placing the chariot in the midst of the armies. Thus he did so and spoke as follows. Text 25. Bhishma dvana pramukhataha savesham tramahikshitam uvacha patapasyaitam samavetan kuruniti. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all other chieftains of the world, Rishikesh, the Lord said, just behold Partha, all the Kurus who are assembled here. As the supersoul of all living entities, Lord Krishna could understand what was going on in the mind of Arjuna. The use of the word Rishikesh in this connection indicates that he knew everything. And the word Partha, or the son of Kunti, or Pritha, is also similarly significant in reference to Arjuna. As a friend, he wanted to inform Arjuna that because Arjuna was the son of Partha, the sister of his own father Vasudeva, he had agreed to be the charioteer of Arjuna. Now, what did Krishna mean when he told Arjuna to behold the Kurus? Did Arjuna want to stop there and not fight? Krishna never expected such things from the son of his own Pritha. The mind of Arjuna was thus predicted by the Lord in friendly joking. Text 26. Tatra pasyasti hitan partha pitrin ata pitamahan achayan matulan bhatrin putran potran sakims tata swashraran suhidas chaiba sanerobaya api. There Arjuna could see within the midst of the armies of both parties his fathers, grandfathers, teachers, maternal uncles, brothers, sons, grandsons, friends, and also his father-in-law and well-wishers all present there. On the battlefield, Arjuna could see all kinds of relatives. He could see persons like Bhurishrava, who were his father's contemporaries, grandfathers Bhishma and Samadatta, teachers like Dronacharya and Kripacharya, maternal uncles like Shalya and Sukuni, brothers like Duryodhana, sons like Lakshman, friends like Ashwatthama, well-wishers like Kritavarma, etc. He could see also the armies which contained many of his friends. Text 27. Tan samiksha sakunteya saban bandhuna bastitan kripa payavisto visidan nidamabravit. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. Text 28. Arjuna uvacha jusvemham swajanam Krishna jujutsun samupastitam siddhanti mamaghatrani mukam cha parisusyati. Arjuna said, my dear Krishna, seeing my friends and relatives present before me in such a fighting spirit, I feel the limbs of my body quivering and my mouth drying up. Any man who has genuine devotion to the Lord has all the good qualities which are found in godly persons or in the demigods, whereas the non-devotee, however advanced he may be in material qualifications by education and culture, lacks in godly qualities. As such, Arjuna, just after seeing his kinsmen, friends and relatives on the battlefield, was at once overwhelmed by compassion for them who had so decided to fight amongst themselves. As far as his soldiers were concerned, he was sympathetic from the beginning, but he felt compassion even for the soldiers on the opposite party, foreseeing their imminent death. And so thinking, the limbs of his body began to quiver and his mouth became dry. He was more or less astonished to see their fighting spirit. Practically the whole community, all blood relatives of Arjuna, had come to fight with him. This overwhelmed a kind devotee like Arjuna. Although it is not mentioned here, still one could easily imagine that not only were Arjuna's bodily limbs quivering and his mouth drying up, but that he was also crying out of compassion. Such symptoms in Arjuna were not due to weakness, but to his soft-heartedness, a characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. It is said, therefore, Yasyasti bhakti bhagavati kinchana svegunas tatra samasate suraha harava bhakta shukatoma hadguna manoratana satidabatobahi. One who has unflinching devotion for the personality of Godhead has all the good qualities of the demigods, but one who is not a devotee of the Lord has only material qualifications, that are of little value. This is because he's hovering on the mental plane and is certain to be attracted by the glaring material energy. Text 29. Viputascha sharire me ramahashascha jayate gandhibam samsate hastat tvakchaiva paridayate. My whole body is trembling and my hair is standing on end. My bow Gandhiva is slipping from my hand and my skin is burning. There are two kinds of trembling of the body and two kinds of standing of the hair on end. Such phenomena occur either in great spiritual ecstasy or out of great fear under material conditions. There is no fear in transcendental realization. Arjuna's symptoms in this situation are out of material fear, namely loss of life. This is evident from other symptoms also. He became so impatient that his famous bow, Gandhiva, was slipping from his hands. And because his heart was burning within him, he was feeling a burning sensation of the skin. All these are due to a material conception of life. Text 30. Nacha shoknomya vastatum abharmati bachame manaha nimittani chapasyami viparitani keshava. I am now unable to stand here any longer. I am forgetting myself and my mind is reeling. I foresee only evil, a killer of the Keshi demon. Due to his impatience, Arjuna was unable to stay on the battlefield and he was forgetting himself on account of the weakness of his mind. Excessive attachment for material things puts a man in a bewildering condition of existence. Bhayam dvitiya biniveshataha. Such fearfulness and loss of mental equilibrium take place in persons who are too affected by material conditions. Arjuna envisioned only unhappiness in the battlefield. He would not be happy even by gaining victory over the foe. The word nimitta is significant. When a man sees only frustration in his expectations, he thinks, why am I here? Everyone is interested in himself and his own welfare. No one is interested in the Supreme Self. Arjuna is supposed to show disregard for self-interest by submission to the will of Krishna, who is everyone's real self-interest. The conditioned soul forgets this and therefore suffers material pains. Arjuna thought that his victory in the battle would only be a cause of lamentation for him. Text 31. Nacha syanupashyami hatva swajanam ahave nakangshe vijayam Krishna nacha rajam sukhani cha. I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsman in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom or happiness, without knowing that one's self-interest is in Vishnu or Krishna. Conditioned souls are attracted by bodily relationships, hoping to be happy in such situations. Under delusion, they forget that Krishna is also the cause of material happiness. Arjuna appears to have even forgotten the moral codes for a Kshatriya. It is said that two kinds of men, namely the Kshatriya who dies directly in front of the battlefield under Krishna's personal orders, and the person in the renounced order of life who is absolutely devoted to spiritual culture, are eligible to enter into the sun globe, which is so powerful and dazzling. Arjuna is reluctant even to kill his enemies, let alone his relatives. He thought that by killing his kinsman, there would be no happiness in his life, and therefore he was not willing to fight, just as a person who does not feel hunger is not inclined to cook. He has now decided to go into the forest and live a secluded life in frustration. But as a Kshatriya, he requires a kingdom for his subsistence, because the Kshatriyas cannot engage themselves in any other occupation. But Arjuna has had no kingdom. Arjuna's sole opportunity for gaining a kingdom lay in fighting with his cousins and brothers and reclaiming the kingdom inherited from his father, which he does not like to do. Therefore, he considers himself fit to go to the forest to live a secluded life of frustration. Text 32 to 35. Kim na rajena govinda, kim boga jivitena ba, yeshamate kankshitam no, rajam bhogai sukhani cha, taime avasti tahajud he, pranamastvaitva danani cha, acharya pitara putras, tataiba cha pitamaha, matulaha sawashra putra, Sharya Sambandinastata Itana Hantamishami Ganatopi Madhusudanaha Api Trilokya Rajasya Hetukim Numahikrite Nihatya Datarastrana Kaprita Swajjanadana. O Govinda, of what avail to us are kingdoms, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed in this battlefield? O Madhusudan, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, brothers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and all relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, then why should I wish to kill them, though I may survive? O maintainer of all creatures, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. Arjuna has addressed Lord Krishna as Govinda because Krishna is the object of all pleasures for the cows and the senses. By using this significant word, Arjuna indicates what will satisfy his senses. Although Govinda is not meant for satisfying our senses, if we try to satisfy the senses of Govinda, then automatically our own senses are satisfied. Materially, everyone wants to satisfy his senses, and he wants God to be the order supplier for such satisfaction. The Lord will satisfy the senses of the living entities as much as they deserve, but not to the extent that they may covert. But when one takes the opposite way, namely, when one tries to satisfy the senses of Govinda without desiring to satisfy one's own senses, then, by the grace of Govinda, all desires of the living entity are satisfied. Arjuna's deep affection for community and family members is exhibited here partially due to his natural compassion for them. He's therefore not prepared to fight. Everyone wants to show his opulence to friends and relatives, but Arjuna fears that all his relatives and friends will be killed in the battlefield, and he'll be unable to share his opulence after victory. This is a typical calculation on material life. The transcendental life is, however, different. Since a devotee wants to satisfy the desires of the Lord, he can, Lord willing, accept all kinds of opulence for the service of the Lord. And if the Lord is not willing, he should not accept a farthing. Arjuna did not want to kill his relatives, and if there were any need to kill them, he desired that Krishna kill them personally. At this point, he did not know that Krishna had already killed them before their coming into the battlefield, and that he was only to become an instrument for Krishna. This fact is disclosed in the following chapters. As a natural devotee of the Lord, Arjuna did not like to retaliate against his miscreant cousins and brothers, but it was the Lord's plan that they should all be killed. The devotee of the Lord does not retaliate against the wrongdoer, but the Lord does not tolerate any mischief done to the devotee by the miscreants. The Lord can excuse a person on his own account, but he excuses no one who has done harm to his devotees. Therefore, the Lord was determined to kill the miscreants, although Arjuna wanted to excuse them. Text 36. Papami Vashrayadashman Advaitanatatayanaha Tasmannaha Vayam Hantum Datarastran Swabandhaban Swajanam Hikataham Hadba Sukina Shamam Madhavaha. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? According to Vedic injunctions, there are 6 kinds of aggressors. A poison giver, one who sets fire to the house, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another's land, and one who kidnaps a wife. Such aggressors are at once to be killed, and no sin is incurred by killing such aggressors. Such killing of aggressors is quite befitting for any ordinary man. But Arjuna was not an ordinary person. He was saintly by character, and therefore he wanted to deal with them in saintliness. This kind of saintliness, however, is not for a kshatriya. Although a responsible man in the administration of state is required to be saintly, he should not be cowardly. For example, Lord Brahma was so saintly that people were anxious to live in his kingdom, Ram Raja. But Lord Rama never showed any cowardice. Ravana was an aggressor against Rama because he kidnapped Rama's wife Sita. But Lord Rama gave him sufficient lessons, unparalleled in the history of the world. In Arjuna's case, however, one should consider this special type of aggressors, namely his own grandfather, own teacher, friends, sons, grandsons, etc. Because of them, Arjuna thought that he should not take the severe steps necessary against ordinary aggressors. Besides that, saintly persons are advised to forgive. Such injunctions for saintly persons are more important than any political emergency. Arjuna considered that rather than kill his own kinsmen for political reasons, it would be better to forgive them on the grounds of religion and saintly behavior. He did not, therefore, consider such killing profitable, simply for the matter of temporary bodily happiness. After all, kingdoms and pleasures derived therefrom are not permanent. So why should he risk his life and eternal salvation by killing his own kinsmen? Arjuna's addressing of Krishna as Madhava, or the husband of the goddess of fortune, is also significant in this connection. He wanted to point out to Krishna that as husband of the goddess of fortune, he should not have to induce Arjuna to take up a matter which would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. Text 37 and 38. Yadyapi tena pasyanti lobhapahata chetasaha kulakshaya kritam dosham mitra drohecha patakam katam nagyayam ashmabi paparashman nivatitum kulakshaya kritam dosham prapashyad vichanadana. O Janardana, although these men, overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarrelling with friends, why should we, with knowledge of the sin, engage in these acts? A kshatriya is not supposed to refuse to battle or gamble when he is so invited by some rival party. Under such obligation, Arjuna could not refuse to fight because he is challenged by the party of Duryodhana. In this connection, Arjuna considered that the other party might be blind to the effects of such a challenge. Arjuna, however, could see the evil consequences and could not accept the challenge. Obligation is actually binding when the effect is good, but when the effect is otherwise, then no one can be bound. Considering all these pros and cons, Arjuna decided not to fight. Text 39. Kulakshaya pranasyanti Kula Dhammaha Sanatanaha Dhaminaste Kulam Krishnam Adamo Abhibhavati Utha. With the destruction of dynasty, the eternal family tradition is vanquished, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in irreligious practice. In the system of the Varnashram institution, there are many principles of religious traditions to help members of the family grow properly and attain spiritual values. The elder members are responsible for such purifying processes in the family, beginning from birth to death. But on the death of the elder members, such family traditions of purification may stop, and the remaining younger family members may develop irreligious habits and thereby lose their chance for spiritual salvation. Therefore, for no purpose should the elder members of the family be slain. Text 40. Hadama Vibhavat Krishna Parushanti Kulastriyaha Stristudusta Shubhasneya Jayate Bana Sankaraha. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become corrupt, and from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Vrishni, comes unwanted progeny. Good population in human society is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. The Varnashram religion's principles were so designed that the good population would prevail in society for the general spiritual progress of the state and community. Such population depends on the chastity and faithfulness of its womanhood. As children are very prone to be misled, women are similarly very prone to degradation. Therefore, both children and women require protection by the elder members of the family. By being engaged in various religious practices, women will not be misled into adultery. According to Chanakya Pandit, women are generally not very intelligent and therefore not trustworthy. So the different family traditions of religious activity should always engage them, and thus their chastity and devotion will give birth to a good population eligible for participating in the Varnashram system. On the failure of such a Varnashram Dharma, naturally the women become free to act and mix with men, and thus adultery is indulged in at the risk of unwanted population. Irresponsible men also provoke adultery in society, and thus unwanted children flood the human race at the risk of war and pestilence. Text 41. Shankarana Kayeva Kulaghanam Kulasyacha Patanti Pitarohisham Lupta Pindoda Kakriya. When there is increase of unwanted population, a hellish situation is created both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. In such corrupt families, there is no offering of oblations of food and water to the ancestors. According to the rules and regulations of fruitive activities, there is a need to offer periodical food and water to the forefathers of the family. This offering is performed by worship of Vishnu, because eating the remnants of food offered to Vishnu can deliver one from all kinds of sinful actions. Sometimes the forefathers may be suffering from various types of sinful reactions, and sometimes some of them cannot even acquire a gross material body and are forced to remain in subtle bodies as ghosts. Thus, when remnants of prasadam food are offered to forefathers by descendants, the forefathers are released from ghostly or other kinds of miserable life. Such help rendered to forefathers is a family tradition, and those who are not in devotional life are required to perform such rituals. One who is engaged in the devotional life is not required to perform such actions. Simply by performing devotional service, one can deliver hundreds and thousands of forefathers from all kinds of misery. It is stated in the Bhagavad-gita, Devarishi Bhutaptaninam Pitrinam Nakin Karona Minicha Rajan Svatmanaja Sharanam Sanyam Katomukundam Parihitya Karatam. Anyone who has taken shelter of the lotus feet of Mukunda, the giver of liberation, giving up all kinds of obligation, and has taken to the path in all seriousness, owes neither duties nor obligations to the demigods, sages, general living entities, family members, humankind, or forefathers. Such obligations are automatically fulfilled by performance of devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 42. Toshitai kulaghanam vana sankara karakai usadyante jati damaha kuladamascha shasvataha. Due to the evil deeds of the destroyers of family tradition, all kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated. The four orders of human society, combined with family welfare activities, as they are set forth by the institution of the Sanatana Dharma or Varnashram Dharma, are designed to enable the human being to attain his ultimate salvation. Therefore, the breaking of the Sanatana Dharma tradition by irresponsible leaders of society brings about chaos in that society, and consequently, people forget the aim of life, Vishnu. Such leaders are called blind, and persons who follow such leaders are sure to be led into chaos. Text 43. Utsana kuladhamanam manushyanam janadana narakenya tambaso babatiti anushushuma. O Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those who destroy family traditions dwell always in hell. Arjuna bases his argument not on his own personal experience, but on what he has heard from the authorities. That is the way of receiving real knowledge. One cannot reach the real point of factual knowledge without being helped by the right person who's already established in that knowledge. There is a system in the Varnashram institution by which one has to undergo the process of abolition before death for his sinful activities. One who is always engaged in sinful activities must utilize the process of abolition called the prayaschitta. Without doing so, one surely will be transferred to hellish planets to undergo miserable lives as the result of sinful activities. Text 44. Ahobata mahatpapam katum vaibasitabayam yadraja sukha lobhena hantum swajanam ujjata. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness. Driven by selfish motives, one may be inclined to such sinful acts as the killing of one's own brother, father, or mother. There are many such instances in the history of the world, but Arjuna, being a saintly devotee of the Lord, is always conscious of moral principles and therefore takes care to avoid such activities. Text 45. Yarimama pratikaram ashastram shastra panaya datarastra rane hanyas tanmekshe mataram bhavet. I would consider it better for the sons of Dhritarashtra to kill me unarmed and unresisting rather than fight with them. It is the custom, according to Kshatriya fighting principles, that an unarmed and unwilling foe should not be attacked. Arjuna, however, in such an enigmatic position, decided he would not fight if he were attacked by the enemy. He did not consider how much the other party was bent upon fighting, All these symptoms are due to soft-heartedness, resulting from his being a great devotee of the Lord. Text 46. Sanjaya uvacha ibamuktva junaha sankye vato pastu pavishat visrijvasa sharam chapam shokka samhigna manasaha. Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. While observing the situation of his enemy, Arjuna stood up on the chariot, but he was so afflicted with lamentation that he sat down again, setting aside his bow and arrows. Such a kind and soft-hearted person in the devotional service of the Lord is fit to receive self-knowledge. Thus end the Bhakti-vedanta purports to the first chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad-gita in the matter of observing the armies on the battlefield of Kuruksettra.